Hello everyone, we are the reporter of the Filipino Grievances against Governor Wood, and we will start our reporting by discussing the background of the author.
Filipino Grievances against General Wood was authored by Gregorio Zaide. Gregorio was born in Pagsanhan, Laguna on May 25, 1907 and died at the age of 81 in Manila in October 31, 1986. Zaide was a Filipino historian, author, and politician from the town of Pagsanhan, Laguna in the Philippines. He is also known as Goyo in his hometown at kilala bilang Dean of Filipino Historiographers dahil nakamit niya ang pagiging multi-awarded author who authored 67 books which later adapted textbook sa mga school ng high school and colleges. He also created or authored more than 500 articles about history. Also, Zaide was the most traveled Filipino historian dahil nag-traveled na siya while teaching and researching sa mga universities dito sa Pilipinas. Tulad ng University of the Philippines Diliman, University of Santo Tomas San Beda College, University of Manila and Forestern University kung saan naging first professor emeritus of history siya after niya mag-retired noong 1964. Nakapag-travel din siya at nakapagturo at nag-research sa mga lugar tulad ng University of Hawaii and around the United States as well as United Nations around Asia. Zaide is also one of the founders of the International Association of Historians of Asia and was also elected as president of the Philippine Historical Association. Here are the awards of Gregorio Zaide. Nakamit niya ang pagiging first Asian to win the United Nations Study Award in 1957. First Filipino na naging miyembro ng Argentina's Historical Institute of American Independence and Mexico's Pan and American Institute of Geography and History. Nakamit din niya ang Diploma of Outstanding Writings on Filipino National Heroes and awarded by the Philippine government the prestigious Republic Cultural Heritage Award in 1968. At nag-retire din siya noong May 25, 1968 at pumasok siya sa politics. Nanalo siya as mayor ng Pagsanhan from 1971 to 1975. As you can see in this slide, here are the major works of Zaide. The following documents or books are among his contribution to the Philippine history started in 1931 to 1983. A Documentary History of the Katipunan in 1931, History of the Katipunan in 1939, Philippine Political and Cultural History in 1949, Great Events in Philippine History in 1951, The Philippine Revolution in 1954, Jose Rizal, Life, Works, and Writings in 1957, History of the Filipino People in 1958, World History in 1965, Great Filipinos in History in 1970, Jose Rizal, Asia's First Apostle of Nationalism in 1970, The Pageant of Philippine History in 1979, History of Asian Nations in 1980, Jose Rizal, Life, Works, and Writings of a Genius, Writer, Scientist, and National Hero with Sonia M. Zaide in 1983, Riquezas Filipinas and Los Archivos de Mexico, titled in Spanish language.
Historical background. This text is taken from Gregorio F. Zaide and Sonia Zaide's document Sources of Philippine History and has originally published as appendix of Maximo M. Calau's Philippine Government under the Jones Law. The document has approved by the Commission on Independence on November 17, 1926. The document is a form of protest, particularly against the Executive Order No. 37 and serve as an impeachment request for Governor Wood. So let's talk about the historical background of this document, the Filipino grievance against Governor Wood. So the reason of this document was Governor Wood was a sign or a form of protest against the Executive Order number 37 and served as an impeachment request for Governor Wood, and this happened during American period. Ito yung mga panahong ang mga Amerikano pa ang namumuno sa bansang Pilipinas. In this slide, as you can see the American flag, it is symbolized the emblem of freedom, not as subjugation. It is also symbol of altruism, not selfishness or greed. Philippines and America. Filipinos placed their trust in the Americans' pledge to help them acquire self-government and independence. Filipinos were patient and diligent to the task of meeting the condition given to them because they trust in the Americans. So that Filipinos placed their trust on Americans because of their pledge to help them acquire self-government and independence. Americans also promised to the Filipinos that they will not colonize our country, that they want to be the Philippines gain and rise when it comes to governing its people. Everything was still fine for their 20 years of staying in the Philippines. Nandoon yung sincerity and respectful. That's why Filipinos believe that they were in good hands, not until General Wood arrived.
Now let's talk about Governor Leonard Wood. Governor Wood was born in Winchester, New Hampshire on October 9, 1860, and he died at the age of 67 in Boston on August 7, 1927. Wood was a United States Army Major General, physician, and public official. He graduated at Harvard Medical School and conscripted to the U.S. Army as a medical doctor. He is also a military governor in Cuba on 1899 to 1902 and in Mindanao on 1903. Wood commanded the Philippine Division of the U.S. Army on 1906 to 1908 and became Chief of Staff in U.S. on 1910 to 1914. A Republican candidate for the presidency but lost in nomination to Warren Harding on 1920. Wood was the Governor General of the Philippines from 1921 to 1927. Major General Leonard Wood arrived in the Philippine Islands in 1903 after his services in Cuba. He was appointed governor of the Mero province comprising the Southern Islands and Mindanao. Aside from being the head of the civil government, he is also responsible for 5 districts and the commanding general of the troops in the Department of Mindanao and Sulu as well. Governor Wood was still not contented in the 21 abuses that he made, kasi gumawa pa siya ng Executive Order number 37. Dito, kinokontrol na niya ang executives ng pamahalaan, which means hindi na natatawag na demokratiko ang ating bansa at hindi na tama ang ginagawa niya. At dito na sila nag-umpisang magprotesta para sa kanilang kalayaan.
He has usurped legislative power by imposing conditions on legislative measures approved by him. He has, in the administration of affairs in Mindanao, brought about a condition which has given rise to discord and dissension between certain groups of Christian and Mohammedan Filipinos. He has, by his policies, strained relations between resident Americans and Filipinos. He has endeavored, on the pretext of getting the government out of business, to dispose of all the companies capitalized by the government worth many millions of people's money to powerful American interests. He has sanctioned the campaign of insidious propaganda in the United States against the Filipino people and their aspirations. He has attempted to close the Philippine National Bank, so necessary to the economic development of the country. He has adopted the practice of intervening in and controlling directly, to its minute details, the affairs of the Philippine government, both insular and local, and violation of self-government. He has insistently sought the amendment of our land laws, approved by the Congress of the United States, which amendment would open up the resources of the country to exploitation by predatory interests. He has refused to assent to laws which were the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has set at naught both the legal authority and responsibility for the Philippine heads of departments. He has substituted his constitutional advisers for a group of military attaches without legal standing in the government and not responsible for the people. He has reserved the policy of Filipinizing the service of the government by appointing Americans even when Filipinos of proven capacity were available. He has obstructed the carrying out of national economic policies duly adopted by the legislature merely because they are in conflict with his personal views. He rendered merely perfunctory the power of the legislature to pass the annual appropriation. appropriation. He rendered merely perfunctory the power of the legislature to pass the annual appropriation law by reviving items in the law of the preceding year, after vetoing the correspondent items of the current Appropriation Act in flagrant violation of the organic law. He has made appointments to positions and authorized the payment of salaries. Therefore, having voted the appropriation for such salaries, he has used certain public funds to grant additional compensation to public officials in clear violation of the law. He has arrogated upon himself the right of exercising the powers granted by law to the emergency board after abolishing said board on the ground that its power involved an unlawful delegation of legislative authority. He has unduly interfered in the administration of justice. He has refused to obtain the advice of the Senate in making appointments where such advice is required by the Organic Act. He has refused to submit the Senate appointment for vacancies occurring during the process of the legislature in contravention of the Organic Act. He has continued in office nominees whose appointments had been rejected by the Senate.
The protest
In the face of this critical situation, we, the constitutional representatives of the Filipino people, met to deliberate upon the present difficulties existing in the government of the Philippine Island and to determine how best to preserve the supremacy and majesty of the laws and to safeguard the right and liberties of our people. Having faith in the sense of justice of the people of the United States and inspired by her patriotic example in the early day of her history, do hereby, in our behalf and in the name of the Filipino people, solemnly and publicly make known about most vigorous protest against the arbitrary acts and usurpation of the present Governor-General of the Philippine Islands, particularly against Executive Order Number 37. So, bali, ito yung protesta nila na humihingi sila ng panawagan sa Amerika at para mabigyan ng katarungan yung stand nila at para ma-secure yung rights and ma-acquire yung justice ng Filipinos at para na rin ma-overthrow si Governor Wood sa kanyang pwesto.
Implication: the document was a form of protest and served as the impeachment request for Governor Wood. It served as an eyewitness account dahil nagpapakita ito ng enough proof sa kung anong yung nangyari those times. The author was directly affected by the law. Kaya siya nag-file ng petition for his own good. Hindi rin siya nagbase dun sa mga tao sa paligid niya or experiences na nakikita niya sa mga tao, kundi for his own favor. Gawa na rin doon sa Executive Number 37, kaya siya nagpetition ng impeachment para kay Governor Wood. Last, it showed the Philippines was under the US and that we are fooled by false promises.
The last part of our reporting was the relevance of the document. The first one in this was the Filipino in 1920s until present time has the confidence to protest against the government. Means that since 1920s, Filipinos are not afraid to protest against the government when it comes to their freedom. And even until now, nangyayari pa rin ang pagproprotesta ng mga Pilipino sa ating gobyerno. Second was the struggle of freedom during American period. It is stated here the struggles of Filipinos for freedom from Americans, even when the times of Spanish. Kaya rin nabuo yung pag-assemble ng magdiwang at magdalo kung natatandaan ninyo sa mga naunang report kung paano lumaban ang ating mga bayani para sa ating kalayaan. So far naman, kahit na hindi masyadong magkaisa or nagkaisa ang ating mga bayani, lalo na sa kartilya ng katipunan, at noon pa man ay lumalaban na ang ating mga ninuno para sa ating kalayaan, at ngayon nga ay nakamit na natin ang ating kalayaan. The third one was the corruption or the corrupt practices of Governor General Leonard Wood before is still a hot issue in today's governance. It means that the corruption was still happening until now. Kung babalikan natin ang mga nagiging pinuno ng Pilipinas o kahit sa mga opisyales sa gobyerno, marami sa kanila ang gumagawa ng korupsyon. At marami ang nagsasabi na dahil dito, kaya mas lalong humihirap ang Pilipinas at hindi umuunlad. The fourth one, we must learn not easily trust people because we do not know their real intentions. In here, just like Filipinos trusted Governor Wood because of the thought that he will also maintain the promise that the American gave to the Filipinos. But it turns out that Governor Wood did the exact opposite of the expectation of the Filipinos from him. As is stated in the expectation of Filipinos for Governor Wood, based on our research, the first one is the cognizant of General Wood's participation in the liberation of Cuba. Filipinos expected that spirit of cooperation would be maintained and the political emancipation would be complete. But the reality was, there was a train of usurpation and arbitrary act resulted in curtailment of our autonomy and destruction of our constitutional system, and the reversal of Americans' Philippine policy. We can also example the running candidates for governance or sa mga nagkakandidato. Nakikita at naririnig natin tuwing sila ay nangangampanya ang kanilang mga pangako at mga plano para sa pag-unlad ng ating bansa. Pero sa oras na sila na ang nakatungtong sa posisyon na iyon, ay hindi naman nila ginagampanan ng maayos ang mga tungkulin nila at hindi nila ginagawa ang kanilang mga pangako. Bagkus nauuwi pa ito sa korupsyon. Kaya wag tayong basta-basta na magtitiwala sa ibang tao kasi hindi natin alam ang tunay na intensyon niya. The last part of relevance of this document was the relevant in the study of Philippine history. This document has a connection in studying the Philippine history in order to know and understand the things that was happening in our present time and to understand kung paano natin nakamit o ang mga bagay na meron tayo ngayon, gaya ng ating kalayaan. At importanteng mapag-aralan natin ito upang matuto tayo sa mga nangyari sa nakaraan, dahil kung hindi tayo matuto sa mga nangyari sa nakaraan, our history will only keep on repeating itself.